Hi, everybody. This is Brady Freeman. I decided to do my presentation on social relationships. So, social relationships is a pretty broad term. It can mean many different things. So, for this presentation or project rather, I chose it to refer to the ways in which people engage with others, such as their friends, strangers, partners, in public areas. So, the U.S. and Czech Republic have very different histories. However, they both share some dark past, which affect the way society functions today. So, with just 30 years that have passed since the oppressive regime of the USSR was toppled, um, many Czechs still hold on to the fears that came along with the long-standing communism um, that was around the country. And so, a quote that I got from Michelle, my um, internship worker, was because of the uncertainty of not knowing who we were talking to, whether it be the KGB. Many people have continued to keep to themselves and are afraid to show emotion to strangers. So this fear kind of was born from things such as bugs that were placed into people's homes, so they would have no privacy, and the USSR was able to hear what their conversations and what they were talking about, as well as purges that took place in Czechoslovakia during the 1950s. For those were people who were opposed to the Communist Party, intellectuals, um, religious figures, so on and so forth. So some similarities that are shared between the Czech Republic and America was that first, although they may come off as rough, um, Czechs and Americans are quick to make friendships. And as told by multiple professors, the Czechs tend to hold a tough shell, but once conversation begins, they become very easy to talk to and actually some of the most interesting people. So nonverbal communication can differ heavily between cultures. Um, and Ting Toomey and Chung discuss haptics as one of the ways people greet each other. So, in both the US and the Czech Republic, it is common to greet people with a handshake, whether it be business, friendship, so on and so forth. And I experienced this because I did an internship while abroad. And every time that I would greet my internship mentor or whatever, I would greet him with a handshake the same way that I would my boss back here. Um, so, another difference or similarity rather that I observed was that both Czechs and Americans tend to stay away from the PDA. They weren't always all over each other, and of course there are some instances in both cultures where PDA can be seen. But I would say for the most part, both Czechs and Americans um, tend not to be tend not to be too overly obvious with their love of each other, especially in comparison to places such as Italy and France. So some differences that I observed and felt the need to discuss were power distance. Um, in the U.S. and Czech Republic, there's a big difference in power, the way that power is seen. The Czech Republic has a large power distance, which can be seen in really almost any situation while you were over there, while we were over there. And I would say the most obvious situation that I was able to see was when I was riding the tram and somebody would get up out of their seat for a pregnant woman or an old lady. And I would say that that never really happens in the U.S. So another one of Hofstede's dimensions is uncertainty avoidance. This dimension can be used to explain why the Czechs tend to be more reserved than the Americans. Czechs have a high uncertainty avoidance, meaning they won't really engage in behavior that they're not completely assured of what the outcome may be, um, which is which kind of serves as a way to explain why they're not too eager to take the time for petty conversations. Um, I would like when walking down the streets here or in the U.S. rather, and you make eye contact with a stranger, I would say for the most part it's custom to flash a smile, sometimes even say, "How are you doing?" But I would say that in the Czech Republic, that kind of behavior is never really seen. So another major difference that I saw while I was there is the dynamic between a waiter and a customer. This kind of refers to the power distance that Hofstede was talking about. Um, but typically in the U.S., a waiter will come frequently to check in on the meal, see if they need water or drinks or anything like that. However, I noticed that in the Czech Republic, customers were given more freedom. the waiter or waitress wasn't always pressuring them or wasn't always going in to check on them. And also, they didn't have the same hospitality that Americans did. They weren't overly excited to meet you at the door as some of them are over here. But another quote that I had from another internship mentor of mine, this is paraphrasing, but she said, American restaurants are much nicer. They even talk to you nicer. She said they're always cheerful and willing to help. So it kind of just shows, she spent some time over here in America, so it kind of just shows the contrast between the two. So some personal experience that I had experiences on both sides, similarities and differences. Um, However, my main takeaway was that Czechs aren't really interested in the polite and friendly engagements that are custom to the U.S. Um, and the Czech Republic is a high context culture. They don't really explicitly give out directions like the U.S. does. Um, and one of these, what I noticed, or had to notice rather, because of the high context thing, was that there was not much talking on the trams or any public transportation, if there was talking at all. Um, so I would say that, yeah. So some other instances of high context cultures that I picked up on were on escalators, specifically from metros. Um, that would People would always stand on the right hand side and let people walk up on the left. And I noticed as soon as I left the country that wasn't the same everywhere, and that usually it's just people stand wherever they want to on the escalators. So some other things that I noticed was just grocery shopping. People weren't really interested in talking or even really making any sort of communications with other customers while they were there. And the same goes for the clerks who were working there, or the cashiers rather, who sometimes could be rude because of the language barrier. But so in conclusion, the Czech Republic and the United States are two separate cultures, which puts emphasis on what's important to each. And although the Czechs don't tend to be as friendly, they share some similar qualities with American, such as the way that people greet each other with a firm handshake, and the fact that they're easy people to talk to and they like to make new friends, although they might not seem that way at first. But um, yeah. So their differences typically include a large power distance, putting more emphasis on hierarchy than what is typical in the US. And they also tend to avoid uncertainty, while Americans usually embrace it, encourage others to go out and try new things. So the high context culture of the Czech Republic may make it difficult for Americans to understand certain aspects of social life, making it more important for the individual to be observant of the way the Czechs operate in their everyday lives, so they can fully understand and appreciate the culture. All right, thank you.